What's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to do 3 more mock drafts to conclude our fantasy football mock draft season. We are going to do 3 different types of formats. We're going to do a full PPR league, a standard league, and a super flex league that features 2 quarterbacks. So from all 3 of these drafts, I'm going to be drafting from the same position in a 12-team league at the 106. I'm going to show you how strategies change depending on the format of your league, whether you're in a PPR, standard, or multiple quarterback format. If you're interested in more content like this, please subscribe to the channel. I make a wide variety of fantasy football content, and I reply to all my commenters as well. So please take advantage of that with this small channel. Ask any questions that you have and comment them below. I'm happy to help you guys. Purpose of this channel is to give you advice to help you win your fantasy football championship this season. Also, if you are new to the channel, check out the Instagram page that has just been created. In that page, I will be dropping breaking news and the fantasy impacts that come along with it. So please take advantage of that as well. All right, everyone. So I will start with my PPR mock draft, and then we will do standard, and then we will do a multiple quarterback format. In this one, it will be 1 QB and 1 super flex, which is usually filled by the quarterback. So I just want to preface this video by saying that most of my fantasy advice is geared towards full PPR formats, and generally that is the most common format that you will see in fantasy football platforms. So because of that, my channel in general is geared towards advice for that particular type of scoring. But I do want to give some love to the other types of scoring systems as well. They can be a lot of fun in their own rights as well. So what I want to do is show you how you prioritize different positions depending on what type of league that you're in. So for each of these, I'm going to be using a different strategy depending on the type of league. But the common denominator is that I'm going to be drafting in a 12-team league, 15-round draft, with the same position. I'm going to be drafting from the 106 position. And the reason why I chose that one is because the general consensus in PPR and standard is that there are 5 players that go at the top of the list. You have Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson among the wide receivers, and then Saquon, Bijan, and Jahmyr Gibbs among the running backs. They're pretty consistently in the top 5 in most platforms that you'll see out there. So the 106 is where things really change up quite a bit, in my opinion, and where you get a little bit more variety in the different platforms. So a lot of these players I have talked about in depth, so this video is going to be a little bit more of an overview in terms of why I like the specific players that I choose. But if you want to check out individually how I rank all the players, you can subscribe to the channel and check out my page where I have all the positional previews for each position in fantasy football, as well as a ranking. So that can help guide your drafts for those of you drafting this weekend as well. But this one, I'm going to give you my overview of what I do in the 3 different types of formats, and we will start with our PPR one here. We have the 106 position. These are all at Sleeper, so a little bit of variance depending on what type of fantasy app you use, but Sleeper is the one that I will be basing these videos off of. So in this particular format, what we see here on Sleeper is kind of the common trend of what I told you about. In a full PPR, you are generally on average going to be trying to prioritize receivers more so than running backs, because the receivers can give you elite value if you get a guy at the top that should be a central point of target volume for his team. So in general, as I've talked about with the wide receiver position, is that I try to get guys that I feel confident in are going to have a lot of target volume. And in this particular league format, it is 2 flex, which means that receivers have even more value, because if you can get those elite receivers that are going to be getting, 10 targets a game, that could very well be 10 receptions and very well be 10 additional points for you, which is worth more than a touchdown. So because of that, in this particular draft, I'm going to be prioritizing receivers a little bit more so than running backs, notwithstanding that running backs are extremely important, as I've explained on this channel, but just wanted to let you know that my priority going into this draft is trying to get guys that are going to be the number one option on their team that I suspect will get a lot of target volume and be very valuable in a full PPR format. So in the first round, the typical cast of characters that I say go off the board: Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, Bijan, Justin Jefferson, and Jahmyr Gibbs. A lot of people have them in different orders, but generally that is the top 5 you will see. The 106 is where things change. And in a full PPR format, you can make an argument here, in my opinion, for CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, or Christian McCaffrey. I decided, for me personally, I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb. I really love Amon-Ra St. Brown's consistency, but he doesn't really give you the elite ceiling that CeeDee Lamb does necessarily. We also have a change in offensive coordinator in Detroit. Maybe that could affect his value a little bit, whereas I feel a little bit more comfortable that CeeDee Lamb will be a pretty consistent wide receiver 1 in Dallas. For Christian McCaffrey, I think that he is a good pick in here as well, because he is going to get a lot of receptions too that will help his receiving numbers in addition to his running numbers. However, I personally would want to try to get an elite receiver here at the top, try to go after some running backs later that I think could be a little bit more valuable for me. And especially since this is a 12-team format, those elite wide receivers will go off the board pretty quick. So I am prioritizing CeeDee Lamb in this draft, but there is an argument for those other 2 players as well, as I mentioned. And they both go off the board in the first round, as well as a lot of other receivers that I have graded at first-round value in terms of Malik Neighbors, Puka, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas, and Drake London, who is the guy that I would wanted to have tried to fall to me at the 207, but it didn't happen. So I decided to go with my next best option here, which is A.J. Brown. So A.J. Brown has a hamstring injury right now, but for me that is not concerning for his value for fantasy. I feel that A.J. Brown is a pretty locked-in number 1 wide receiver for Jalen Hurts. And this sets up a situation where, maybe at the time of doing this draft, maybe I can get Hurts fall to me in the 3rd round. That could be interesting value. So what I did here is I decided to stack up on my wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. I want to feel confident in a full PPR format that I have those 2 receivers as guys that I could just set and forget, play them every week, and not have to worry about moving in and out your receivers. If you have 2 guys in this type of format that you could just set every week at your wide receiver 1 and 2 and never have to move them other than their bye, it really gives you a lot of leverage to, 1, improve your running back depth, is that they're a little more injured and they have a little more volatility in terms of guys that are in the picture week to week. Wide receivers is generally the elite guys stay elite through the majority of the season. So that's why I'm trying to lock this up with CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown, who both should have pretty good performances in week 1, especially since they're playing each other. Should be a high-scoring game. Then we have 2 quarterbacks go off the board, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. This is a little bit too high for me to take quarterbacks, in my opinion, in the 2nd round. But there's not a bad argument towards it necessarily, but I would rather wait until probably the 3rd or 4th round at the earliest to try to take a quarterback in these formats. A couple of running backs go off the board that I like. I like Chase Brown. I also like Hampton and Kamara, but this was one of the weird drafts to me where Trey McBride fell. Usually he's been going late 2nd round to early 3rd, and in this particular one he falls to me around mid-3rd. So I put a lot of thought into it, and I decided to, because I was thinking Jalen Hurts, as I mentioned earlier, to stack with A.J. Brown, get that Eagle stack going. But I decided to go with Trey McBride because in these formats, when you have a tight end that is going to be getting 10 plus targets on a week in and week out basis, which is what's going on in Arizona, with Kyler Murray, I feel pretty confident that Trey McBride is going to be a game changer at this position. So I decided to just lock that in now, as I had Trey McBride fall to me in the 3rd round. It's a little bit risky in terms of you lose some of your running back depth that you may like, but I decided to get that tight end out of the way. I'm going to probably wait a little bit at quarterback to try to get some depth at the other positions so that I don't burn it all on 2 onesie positions, for lack of better words. But Trey McBride is here at my tight end. Happy about that because that really, other than Bowers, McBride is one of the few guys that can really make a huge difference week in and week out, depending on who your opponent is putting out there at tight end. The other 3 quarterbacks that are rated in the top 5 all went 3rd round. I like it for Hurts, but for the other 2, it's a little bit too high for me. A lot of receivers go off the board here as well, and the running back that I was hoping to get, Omarion Hampton, was taking the pick before me, unfortunately. So at this point in the draft, I decided to focus in on trying to get a running back, try to get a little bit more depth there because I've put that off now until the 4th round. And I decided to go with Kamara here. A lot of concerns about Kamara's age, but for me, especially since this is full PPR, he will be heavily involved on a week in and week out basis getting targets from the Saints. Should be a great option for me in PPR. And this team is not going to be very good, but because they don't have a lot of other options, they're going to rely on Kamara heavily. I feel confident about him being a RB1 for me in this format. Then we go through some other running backs. I don't necessarily love guys like Kenneth Walker and James Conner necessarily, so they were both off the board for me. We also saw Mahomes go, as well as some other receivers. The one that I wanted to get was the one that fell to me, and that is Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos. So this sets up an interesting stack. And one of the more underrated stacks I think you can get is Sutton and Nix, which you can generally get around 5th to 7th round value. So I like Sutton to be in there as my first flex, a wide receiver that should be getting a ton of targets and top 12 upside, but is going generally in the 5th to 6th round. One of the better values that you can get at wide receiver, in my opinion. So we have a couple more wide receivers go off the board, a couple of the running backs as well. I did put some thought into Travion Henderson for that last pick to get a second running back, but I felt a little bit more comfortable about having an elite receiver because this is full PPR. We also had Hawkinson go off the board too, but mostly this is receivers within a few running backs. So as you may know as you may see by looking at this mock draft here, there are a lot of receivers that go early, so you have to pounce on them a little bit earlier than you would in the half PPR or the standard leagues. So it comes back around to me again, and I put some thought into whether or not I would decide to go quarterback here, or if I would decide to go running back. I thought about the Bo Nix stack with Sutton, as I mentioned earlier. I did think about Pollard, because I think he's very underrated, and now that Tajay Spears is on IR, he will have a runway for a lot of opportunity early in the season. Thought about RJ Harvey, but since I have Sutton, I don't want to overload on the Broncos too much at different positions. So what I decided to do is I decided to go Calvin Ridley here. And he's another guy that I really love. Much like Sutton, he is projected to be the number 1 on his team. Ridley is going much lower, though, because he didn't have a great season last year, but they're upgrading tremendously at quarterback by going from Will Levis to Cam Ward. And I mentioned this earlier a couple videos back. This is the guy that I think can most replicate the Terry McLaurin type of comeback that we saw last year, where he's going generally in these middle rounds, but can actually become a top 12 wide receiver on the season. So I don't think Calvin Ridley will finish that high necessarily, but I do think this is great value, and he should be locked in as the top target volume guy on this team. I went with him, and I decided to see if one of the quarterbacks fell, because there are 2 that I'm interested in, Bo Nix, mentioned earlier, and Kyler Murray. Once it gets to Murray, that's when there's kind of a big drop-off to me at quarterback. And I have Trey McBride. So by getting Murray, I'm happy with the stack here, where he can hopefully get some touchdowns. Trey McBride didn't really work out that way necessarily last year. But because of that, it maximizes both my quarterback and tight end position when I have both of them on the same team. So I feel happy about my receiver core. Got the quarterback and tight end on the same team. At this point now, my focus is on trying to get great talent where I could find it, as well as stacking up on the running backs, because I've put running backs off now. This is the 7th round, and I need to be trying to get up to speed on that. I was going to try to go running back in the 8th, but when Emeka Egbuka was available, I decided to take him. Because the way this Buccaneers team is setting up, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Egbuka early on this season. Chris Godwin is not going to be playing week 1. We also have Jalen McMillan getting injured, Kate Otten dealing with injury. There are a lot of guys that are iffy right now on this team. And Ibuka, first-round wide receiver, has a great opportunity to step up. I like him in a situation where you could put him on the bench and stash him. I don't feel that I wouldn't feel comfortable starting him week 1, but this is something I want to stash and see how it develops. And I have the ability to do that because I have a pretty good receiving core already. The other running backs, some other ones went off the board like Scatabo, Brian Robinson. The one that I just wanted to get of these guys that fell to me here in the 9th round is Jordan Mason. I haven't talked a ton about him, but I really like his upside this season as a guy that should be able to supplant the older Aaron Jones in Minnesota, and I suspect this will be a 50-50 split between touches early on in the season. But later on in the season, I do believe that Jordan Mason will get more involved. Could be a great sleeper here that you're getting pretty late in drafts. The 10th round is one of the biggest sleepers that really has not risen too much on draft boards. I reached for him a little bit here. Austin Eckler here in the 10th round. Now, one of the biggest disparities I've seen is that Eckler and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who I'll talk about in a little bit, are going much higher in ESPN. They have adjusted their rankings and the draft board, not as much on Sleeper. You see a little bit more rise for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt over the past few weeks. Eckler has stayed relatively the same because, the trendy thing is to pick the rookie over the aging veteran. But I do like Eckler overall more in this split here. And I talked about it a little bit on my channel. You could check out my take on the Brian Robinson trade. But these guys are some of the best value that you can get in the draft at this point. I have been making sure to get Eckler and or Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I like to try to get both because then you have the whole backfield covered. I'm not really worried about Chris Rodriguez becoming a major fantasy player aside from a few touchdowns here and there. But these two are the guys that I'm going to be trying to target in a lot of these late drafts. So this will not be the last time that you will see both of these two in my mocks. I thought about going JCM in the next round, in the 11th, but considering I already lost the Denver Broncos, I lost the Steelers, the Texans are the last defense that I really feel comfortable reaching for, and then I decide to punt it off till the end. So I decided to go Texans here, get a defense that I feel comfortable about, that should be one of the better units in the league, and I'm happy about getting them here. And things worked out for me in the 12th round that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was still there. I decided to take him. There was consideration that I could have gone Nick Chubb. I'll talk about him a little bit later, but I like him a little bit more for standard, as you will see in the next mock. A couple more running backs go off the board. Ramondre, Tank Bigsby, Jaden Blue. That was a guy I was really considering as well for this. And Najee Harris. J.J. McCarthy off, as well as the kickers have started going off the board already. I'm not going to be drafting a kicker in this video. Check out my kicker video to see why. But at this point, I felt that based on the way the draft board was, there were a lot of running backs later on that I felt like I could pass on, let these remaining teams pick their defenses, quarterbacks, kickers, whatever that they need. And I decided to go Keenan Allen here at wide receiver. I think in a full PPR format, he could be one of the better options out there because of the fact that he is very effective with heavy target volumes in the past. Not as good of a situation he's had in his years past in Los Angeles, but this is still a low-risk, potentially high-upside play by trying to get Keenan Allen here in the 13th. Coming back around to me in the 14th, this is one of the running backs I love, Ollie Gordon of the Miami Dolphins. He, to me, has some of the best undrafted potential or deep round running back potential because Devon Achane is dealing with a calf injury already. This offense is not looking great in general. For supporting Achane's health, their line is not great. Achane has been frequently injured. If he's not good to go in week 1, Gordon has performed better than Jalen Wright this offseason, and he is moving up the depth charts, had a good preseason. He's one of the better options that you could take should this Achane situation turn into the same thing we saw with Christian McCaffrey a year ago. And then one of the other running backs that I really love that's a rookie that you can get late as well is Dylan Sampson. I take him with my last pick. You will see both Gordon and Sampson in later mocks in this video because both of them are not costing you anything, but there's a real world where both of them are starting running backs. And I do want to bring up the Cleveland Browns are playing the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 1, which is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So if Dylan Sampson is the starter Week 1, this has a lot of upside for you. Even if you don't start him, just to have him on your bench, that has a lot of value that you could use in trades just given 1 week of the guy's career if he goes off. That is a very good leverage tool to have as you enter Week 2, which I'll get into a little bit more of that when we start next week's strategy videos, ways that I can help you win Week 1 and then win beyond as well. So be on the lookout for that. And this is my team overall. Quarterback Kyler Murray, running back Alvin Kamara, Jordan Mason as my starters. I have CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown at the 2 receivers, Trey McBride. 2 flexes are Cortland Sutton, Calvin Ridley. No kicker. I will pick one up later. Houston Texans defense, Abuka, Eckler, Krosky Merritt, Allen, Gordon, and Dylan Sampson on my bench. I'm pretty happy with this squad for PPR. This worked out pretty well for me. And yeah, I'd definitely be happy to have this team. All right, so we will go into the next mock here. This is going to be our standard mock. So because of that, receptions do not count as points. I'm going to be trying to prioritize running backs more in this video, as you may imagine, and particularly running backs that I suspect will be getting touchdowns. And kind of the same with receivers. So I'm looking at guys that are not necessarily going to be getting a ton of targets, but guys that are trusted in the end zone that I think are going to be good value for me in a format where the touchdowns make the difference between you winning and losing the week, more so than the receptions. So the typical top 5 go off the board, as I mentioned earlier. Bijan, Saquon, Chase. And Chase, interestingly, went behind Bijan and Barkley. I don't even know if I would do that, to be honest, even though this is a full standard, just because of how much I love Chase. And then Gibbs and Jefferson. So now things are a little bit different. I'm going to be going for a running back. And although you may see in my video that I have Christian McCaffrey as my number 4 running back, that is for PPR formats. My actual number 4 for standard would be Derrick Henry. And that is because I feel that he is one of the best running backs that you could have for standard. Simply, he's huge. There's nothing really else that you have to say. The guy it always finds a ways to get into the end zone, short yardage, long distance. This guy is a machine in standard format leagues. I would still be happy to have him, even though he is getting up there in age, because of how good this offense is. I suspect Derrick Henry will have another good season, and I'm happy taking him here with my first pick in standard. Then the receivers go off the board. You get some other running backs there as well. You also had Josh Allen and Brock Bowers go off the board. And I just want to say, generally, I think you can make more of an argument to reach for quarterbacks and tight ends in standard because it's not as much based on reception. So you're trying to go for the guys that are going to be getting touchdowns. And Josh Allen, although he could 1, run for touchdowns, but 2, he's going to be able to throw for touchdowns. And if he throws for like 3 in a game, that's going to be the equivalent of 2 touchdowns running the ball. So because of that, you can reach more for quarterbacks in this format and feel comfortable with it. That's not the strategy that I chose for this mock, as you may be able to see on YouTube already for those watching it there. But I just want to let you know that it's a little bit easier to reach for the elite quarterbacks in standard and justify that. I decided to go Josh Jacobs here. He's kind of like a poor man's Derrick Henry in the sense that the end of the year last year, he was just going off for touchdowns. This guy is the clear workhorse back in Green Bay. They should have a great offense again, and I suspect as the weather gets cold, it will just be even better for his touchdown output once again. Very happy to have him as my running back too. And if you notice, very different from my last mock where I went wide receivers first. In standard here, I'm going 2 running backs first. So, comes back around to me. And, there's guys that I do like in this range, like Garrett Wilson. I do kind of like Marvin Harrison Jr. to have a comeback as well. The one I feel most comfortable, though, to actually get touchdowns is Terry McLaurin. I would rank Garrett Wilson ahead of him in PPR, but because this is standard, I'm going with Terry McLaurin for the touchdown potential, which he was very successful last year with Jaden Daniels. I think Terry McLaurin is one of the better wide receiver ones that you can get for this particular type of format, in my opinion. Happy to get him here in the 3rd round. Then we have Daniels and Hurts go off the board. I would have probably picked one of them up here in the 4th had they had fallen to me, but they did not. I can't really justify Joe Burrow going in the 4th round personally. So what I decided to do here is get another receiver that I feel is going to be a great value in standard, and that is DK Metcalf of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So because of that, I decided to pick him here. This guy should be one of Aaron Rodgers' favorite targets, and I think in the short yardage situation, Pittsburgh has they have Caleb Johnson, who's a rookie, and they have Jalen Warren, who is pretty mediocre. So because of that, I think Aaron Rodgers will be in the red zone looking at DK Metcalf quite often, and that is one of the better receivers that I like in this range too for standard. So I have Metcalf and McLaurin as my 2 receivers, Henry and Jacobs as 2 running backs. Those are 4 players to me that I think are probably the preferred targets on all these teams for touchdowns in short yardage situations. So happy about that. I decided to go a little bit more of a wild card here in the 5th round, and I decided to take a 5th running back, somebody that could go one of either directions, but I'm taking the chance on his upside here, Trevion Henderson of the New England Patriots. And I like him a little bit more in PPR, but I think considering in this format, you're trying to find running backs that give you elite value, and really here, the other options were David Montgomery, RJ Harvey, Aaron Jones, Pacheco. Guys, I like them, but I think the best upside that you can get of those guys is Trevion Henderson. I decided to go with him here, and he's going to be taking up my first flex. So the flexes are going to more so in standard be filled by running backs than receivers. So that's going to be my strategy here in building this roster. And in the 6th round, I get Tony Pollard. I like Tony Pollard a lot as one of these running backs you can get in the 5th, 6th round. He's kind of being slept on still despite the Tajay Spears injury, but he should really be the full workhorse back on this team with an improved quarterback play, as I mentioned with Calvin Ridley. So if this was PPR, I probably would have taken Ridley here, who went a whole round later, but I decided to go with Tony Pollard in this situation. As it got back around into the 7th round, I decided to take my quarterback here, and Bo Nix is one of the ones that I really like as well that you can get a little bit late. To me, the tiers of quarterbacks that I'm trying to target, Allen and Lamar are going a little bit too high for me. Hurts and Daniels, if they're available in the 3rd or the 4th, preferably 4th, I would go after them. Then if those guys go, which generally they do before I start picking quarterbacks, then my next group of targets are Bo Nix and Kyler Murray. And in this one, I decided to get Bo Nix, see if I could potentially get a guy that I think has upside to be a top 5 quarterback. I don't know if it will happen necessarily, but I do like top 10 for him. I think this is solid value considering where he's going in drafts. And unfortunately, I have to double check this. I believe that Sutton was already off the board, unfortunately, so that didn't really work out for me to get the stack here. But again, this is another format where I think if you're in standard, if you can get Sutton with Bo Nix, that would be great because they have very good chemistry in the red zone as well. More receivers go off the board. Now you have the other quarterbacks, Baker and Kyler, the guys that are in that range. I've started to like Bo Nix a little bit more than Baker Mayfield personally as the draft processes went along. I decided to shore up more receivers here in the 8th round, and I decided to go Ricky Pearsall. The way things are looking now, Ricky Pearsall is going to be the clear top wide receiver on this team. I wouldn't say clear top pass catcher because that's probably still George Kittle and maybe McCaffrey as well. But Pearsall, first round wide receiver last year. The other guys are dealing with injuries. Brandon Ayuk won't play for a while. Jennings has a contract dispute plus injury. And then after him, the guys that are healthy are Sky Moore, and they just brought in MVS, who I will never play in fantasy. So because of that, I think Pearsall is one of the much like Ibuka. If you could stash him on your bench, that's a great situation. See if he can play his way into your starting lineup. I decided to go there instead of tight end because I had a couple guys that I liked in this range that I wanted to see what would happen if I waited. I could go Ingram and stack him with Bo Nix. I could go Warren, or I could, wait it out a little bit more. But things worked out for me. I was going to go either Ingram or Warren here, and Warren did fall to me in this position, so I decided to pick up Tyler Warren as my tight end in the 9th round. Things continue on down the draft, and, I was very fortunate that Ibuka fell to me here because guys like Brandon Ayuk, Darnell Mooney are being drafted ahead of him here, Michael Pittman. All those guys I really do not like for fantasy this season. Pittman kind of, but I think he's still being overdrafted now considering what happened with Daniel Jones. I like Warren and Downs more personally. But Ibuka fell to me here in the 10th, and I picked him up again. So I just talked about him. I think he's way better value than Jawan Jennings, Ayuk, Mooney, guys going at Matthew Golden. I'm pretty much out on the whole Green Bay receiver core in fantasy. I haven't really been picking any of them up. You can make an argument for Golden, if any. But getting Ibuka here in the 10th, I was very happy about that. We have some more quarterbacks go off the board, Love and Prescott, 2 more tight ends, and a couple running backs and receivers. Keon Coleman I did put some thought into as well with Ibuka. But I decided to go Ibuka because I do feel that there's more of a chance that he will get some touchdowns versus Keon Coleman has got to compete with James Cook and Josh Allen for his touches in a standard format. I got Eckler again in the 11th. As I told you already, he's one of the guys that I'm hyper-targeting in these types of drafts because of where his ADP is. And later on, I don't know if I would be able to pull this off in a real draft because the way that Sleeper had these teams, the defensive units ADP listed, they were going way late, as you could see. They're all kind of down at the end. That will not happen in real life. I decided to go Denver Broncos defense here. I really like them. A lot of the running backs I had been interested in after Eckler are gone right now, to include guys like Jadon Blue, Rico Dowdle, etc. Those guys were all off the board, and I decided to go with Eckler. I decided to go with the Denver Broncos defense because I wanted to make sure I lock up that position. They're my favorite, number 1 defense. And they have a great start to the season going up against the Indianapolis Colts in Week 2 and then Tennessee Week 1. I get Nick Chubb in the 13th. I told you I'd bring him up again. Joe Mixon is not playing the first 4 weeks of the season. In standard formats, Nick Chubb is one of the best running backs that you can get late. He should be getting a lot of looks in the red zone. Could be a starter very well for your team, and I'm getting him here in the 13th round. So I'm very thrilled about that. I feel great about the running backs on this team that I've drafted here. It's the receivers that I'm a little bit more concerned about. But Chubb is just too good a value for me to leave out there. I think that he could very well be a starter in standard leagues early in the season. I decided to go tight end again. With Warren, he may take a little bit of time to warm up to things. And considering this is a standard league, looking at touchdowns, Zach Ertz, another one of Jadon Daniels' targets he likes in the red zone. I think he has a little bit more value in standard in that regard. So I decided to go 2 tight ends here, get Ertz off the board as well. I could have made an argument for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt as well, but decided to do things a little bit different here in this video. And then in the last round, I went Dylan Sampson again, who I've already explained is somebody that I really like, and he gets Cincinnati Week 1 as the possible starter for the Browns. And we will go to our last mock in this video. We will talk about Superflex leagues. In this particular league, we have 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. We have a tight end, a regular flex, and then a super flex, which includes wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, and quarterback. I'm going to be going for 3 quarterbacks here. And as I mentioned, there is a Mount Rushmore of fantasy football quarterbacks. 4 guys that are in a tier of their own and are elite. They are Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts. Things change in this Superflex League where now those guys are going up at the top. And I have different philosophies on this because there's a lot of things you can do with Superflex where if you get one of those four, you have one of the best scoring players. But because they are getting drafted so early, it also gives you access to potentially have, you know, a Saquon Barkley, a Jamar Chase. So you could play around with it in different ways. I would personally, if I had, the way I have these players ranked is Josh Allen 1, Jalen Hurts 2, Lamar Jackson, and Jaden Daniels. If Hurts falls, I would be likely to take him here at the 106. If not, I would probably then go Lamar, most likely, but then if it's Jaden Daniels, I may pass him if somebody like Jamar Chase or Saquon is available. The way this particular mock went, Lamar went 101, Bijan 102, interestingly, Josh Allen 103. By the way, I just want to bring this up. I was in a 14-team PPR single flex, and somebody had the 101 and picked Josh Allen 101. I was just like blown away. Like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you taking Josh Allen ahead of Jamar Chase when this is a full PPR, 14-team league? It's just, I don't know what that was about. It just made me think of that because, in this super flex league, Josh Allen is going 103, and in this league I'm in, he went, 101. Is this crazy? Especially given that it's a 14-team league. Like, come on, man. All right. Should have been watching my videos. So then it was Jaden Daniels, then Jamar Chase. So the way this draft fell, Hurts, a quarterback I really like. One, for his consistency, and two, for the amount of touchdowns that he's going to be getting running the ball with the tush push. He is available to me at 106. That's who I decided to go with here. And now that I have him, I'm going to be trying to, probably get some quarterbacks a little bit later. I'm not going to be trying to reach for quarterbacks too early unless there's one that I really like. And I will talk this player in a little bit. There's one that I really like that you can get in the middle rounds that should be excellent for these type of formats. Then you have some of the bigger names going off the board. The best name that fell to me in the second round that I decided to go with was Nico Collins. I like him as a locked-in wide receiver one, much like the guys I've talked about, like Drake London, A.J. Brown, stuff like that. Guys that you can get in some second-round ranges. They are some of the better values that you can get for me that are likely to be second-round picks, potentially. Maybe not Collins, but all of them are very good, and I'm happy to get Nico Collins as my wide receiver one. So it sets up the potential to maybe look at Stroud later on in a stack, if that's the option presented to me. Comes back around to me at the 103. I would have probably looked into getting London or Brown had they had fallen, but I decided here to go with a running back I really like, Chase Brown. I've talked about him quite a lot of why I love him. And in this particular type of super flex league, it is PPR, so that helps Chase Brown with his receptions that he's likely to get too. So because of that, he is going to be taken to me. And this is a situation like you see Patrick Mahomes here going in the second round. I know that this is two quarterback, but that's just a bad pick to me. Like, I would much rather have Brian Thomas, probably not Achane, but everybody else taken until Chase Brown. Mahomes is not like going to give you that elite value compared to the other quarterbacks. So to me, like, it's only worth getting in Superflex, getting a quarterback that high unless you're getting one of those 4 Mount Rushmore guys that I talked about. Otherwise, you would be better off just waiting and trying to find your value later. That's why, this team 10 in this picture, they went with Joe Burrow number 1. I love Joe Burrow, but I would not do that in a Superflex league. I would be trying to get, elite skill position players and then try to hedge your bet on getting quarterbacks maybe in the 3rd or 4th round. So because of that, Chase Brown fell to me a little bit. Happy to get him there. And then another receiver that I really liked, I've talked about before, Terry McLaurin, falls to me in the 4th round. And this is something I am very happy about. especially if I would have happened to get Jaden Daniels too. That would be great. I know I said earlier I may have passed on him. That would be a long thought process for me, but I had Hurts here, taking Terry McLaurin here in the 4th round. Pretty happy about that. So in this, very similarly, you kind of, in this particular Superflex, because it is PPR, I'm trying to get some more of these elite possession receivers. And I decided to go Tedero McMillan versus some other names because at this point, you get to Travion Henderson. That's kind of the cutoff line to me with these running backs where, you could be trying to go for, Chuba Hubbard here, Connor, Harvey, but those guys are not really expected to get except for Connor should be getting the majority workload, but he's getting up there in age. Hubbard and Harvey have significant other running backs there that could eat up their carries. Tedero McMillan should be locked in as the wide receiver 1 on that team, especially since Adam Thielen just got traded. It looks even better now. So I decided to go Tech McMillan here, get a 3rd wide receiver that I really like. And I much like my other video, I'm going to be trying to get some running back value later on that I really like, but not too much at the expense of quarterbacks that I like. And that is why, to me, when Justin Fields was available to me in the 6th round, I decided to pull the trigger there. Justin Fields is somebody that has a lot of polarity in terms of how people view him in the fantasy football community for this season. I think for 2 quarterback leagues, he is one of the better values that you can get because of the elite upside he gives you. Once you get to this point, there are only a few guys that could give you 100 yards rushing a game with a rushing touchdown. If he also throws for one as well, he has top 10 upside. He's on a new team. He's kind of bounced around the league already in his short career, but there's a lot to like here, and I'm happy to get Justin Fields in a format where he will be utilized by somebody more so than the single quarterback leagues. But to get Justin Fields, his value goes up tremendously in this type of format to me. Happy to get him here as well. The draft moves along, and I get Tony Pollard. I talked about him earlier. That fills my 2nd running back position of need that I have there. Continued to move along again. At this point, I decided to shore up my tight end because I looked ahead and I saw that 3 teams needed a tight end. I decided to just pull the trigger here before getting another running back and decided to get Tyler Warren with this particular pick. So with the selection of Tyler Warren, I now have my tight end. I have 2 quarterbacks, so I have both the QB1 and the Superflex filled with Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields. I have Chase Brown and Tony Pollard as my 2 running backs. You don't love it necessarily in a single quarterback format, but I do like having Brown, and I think Pollard will give me great value as well, especially early in the season. Really like these 2 in my running back room. And then the receivers are one of the strengths of this team I like. Nico Collins, Terry McLaurin, and Tedero McMillan, as well as Tyler Warren at tight end. So now my focus is trying to get more running backs and trying to get a 3rd QB that I really like as well. Because Justin Fields, as I explained earlier, there's a lot of range of outcomes you can get. You could get elite value, or you could have it fall on your face. So because of that, I'm going to be trying to get a 3rd quarterback I really like as well to conclude this mock. So as it comes around to me in the 9th here, a lot of the receivers go that I would have looked at, like Pearsall, Jacoby Myers. I could have looked at Jordan Addison too. So when it comes around to me here, I felt that I needed to shore up my running back depth the most. And one of the last guys I think that really gives you potentially elite upside that is available in this 9th, 10th round range that, could very well be a top, 15 running back. He's just shortly removed from it 2 years ago, Travis Etienne. And this is not really much of a risk either. He could sit on my bench for now, and if he does take control of that backfield and Liam Cohen can unlock a Bucky Irving type season for Travis Etienne, this is great value for me. And I would be happy to take a chance on Travis Etienne at this point in the draft. Later on, I decided to do that because there's two quarterbacks I really like. I thought about Michael Penix here as well as Cam Ward. And I felt that based on the fact that, you look at your opponents, there's really only one guy that doesn't have a quarterback at this point. So he's probably going to be taking two. I would bet that there's a chance that maybe he doesn't go with Ward or Penix. And I decided to get my running back shored up. Cost myself, Jordan Mason, Cam Skattebo, guys that went ahead. But the guy that needed a quarterback chose Penix and Tua. So because of that, I was able to get Cam Ward later on. And, if I had Ridley, I think that would really be a great play, is to have a stack among that second quarterback, trying to pair your second quarterback based on another receiver that you got that you really like earlier on. That's a very good move to make in these two quarterback types of leagues. I decided to go Cam Ward here because I do think there's a lot of upside here. He can sit on my bench for now, and depending on how things go with Fields, there's a world where Ward could find his way to fantasy relevance in certain matchups. Expect a slow start, though, because he's playing the Denver Broncos week 1, but don't panic in these formats and try to drop Cam Ward, because I think that he is going to be good for fantasy this season. Just may not be the most consistent because he is a rookie. As the draft went around, there were some running backs I would have been interested in taking. Zach Charbonnet, J.K. Dobbins. A lot of tight ends went around this 10-11 turn range. I decided to go Keon Coleman. As I talked about earlier, I really like Keon Coleman to emerge as Josh Allen's potential number 1 target. And a situation where, again, I could sit him on the bench and see how things develop. He is somebody that I like a little bit more in PPR type formats than standard. But I think he is one of the better guys that you can get in this particular range. And then, as I've done in all 3 of these mocks, I've grabbed Austin Eckler late. This one, I got him in the 12th round. You could get him even later because all these quarterbacks are going so much higher. You can get Austin Eckler at a much cheaper cost in these super flex leagues. So just keep that in mind, is that there are a lot of great running back sleepers that you can take late because all the quarterbacks are moving up the draft board. So that gives you the ability to really get some great positional value later on in the draft. After Austin Eckler, a couple running backs I like. I wanted to try to get Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt again to pair with Eckler, but it did not happen. So I decided to punt from the running back position and go Keenan Allen again. Already talked about him. I wish this particular type of system format had defenses going a little bit higher. The way that this mock was set up, of all the kickers going, except for me, all the kickers going in the second to last round, all the defenses going in the last round, that will not happen in real life, even though it probably should. Because of that, I got the Denver Broncos with my second to last pick, and then I got Dylan Sampson again to close things out. As I said, he's probably the best last round running back that you can get, and that's why I got him in every single video that you see today. All right, so that is all that I've got for the mock drafts leading up to the fantasy football season. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, comment them below. I reply to all my commenters, so please take advantage of that with this small channel. Ask any questions that you got, and we will be getting ready for week 1 soon. So over the weekend, not going to be a ton of fantasy football content. I will talk fantasy basketball as we're starting to get to that point, starting to preview some of those teams. And, Labor Day weekend is kind of the last reprieve to be able to do that. Then we will get into week 1. I will talk guys that you could pick up on waivers that you might be able to play week 1, as well as start sit. So be on the lookout for that. And hope you guys have a great weekend. And hope you have a great draft for those of you that are going to be concluding your draft season this upcoming weekend. All right. Well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.